Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. I'm Sally Flinchbaugh. I am the COO at the Oshman Family JCC, and I have been part of the organizing committee, or I should say I have been part of the people rooting Todd and his team on making this happen. So thank you again to Todd and team. I am here to introduce our keynote speaker, Doron Krakow, who is the president and CEO of the JCCA Association of North America. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on a bio for him because we're already running late, and I'm going to just go with it that he's a really nice guy. He's super approachable, and I'm sure he'd love to talk to you afterward, except for he might fall off the stage and fall asleep because he just flew in from Israel. So I will let him take it from here.
Thank you, Sally. I gave her a tough assignment when I walked into the room a little while ago. I said, please don't read a bio. Those bios are tiring, exhausting to listen to, and it's about you, it's even worse. I said, make it personal. So he just flew in from Israel. I guess that qualifies. And nice guy. Yeah, that's working as well so far. All right, good. We're good, Sally. That's working out really well. So as Sally mentioned, actually, I just flew in from Israel, and here's the short story about that. This was supposed to be a ProCon week, the Continental Professional Conference, which has traditionally been a biannual conference. And a number of months ago, an experience I think that many of you have dealt with locally, we dealt with continentally, the Great Resignation, which caused some upheaval in the labor and employment market, visited JCCA Association, and it never visits at an opportune time. You know that very well from your shop. It didn't visit us at an opportune time either. We came out of the summer and we said, we don't think we're going to be able to carry this off. It's going to be too big a lift where we're down too many staff. So we made the very difficult decision to say we're going to postpone it. And not long after that, somebody said to me, since there isn't going to be a ProCon, why don't you go to Israel the week before there would have been one? It's a perfect time to go. And I'll say a few words about my trip to Israel in a minute. It would have been a perfect time. It actually was a perfect time. I took part in the Jewish Agency's Summer Shlichim training seminar last week at Kibbutz Shvaim, which is a little bit north of Tel Aviv. Our movement receives a larger number of summer shlichim through the Jewish Agency of any sector or organizational universe in the North American Jewish community, over 400 shlichim. And I had the great privilege of spending time and talking with them and hearing from them and learning from them, also spending time with the 40 representatives of our camps, day and overnight, that made the trip to participate in their training. And it was particularly meaningful because even before the complications in Israel that have evolved under the new coalition government, and I'll say a few words about that in a minute as well for those who are tuned in. It's been a little bumpy on Israel diaspora relations of late. And because of things that are happening in American society, I think in Canadian society as well, it's just not been as smooth. And if you're one of 400 young Israelis who's just completed your military service and you're planning to spend a summer in a highly intensive, highly immersive Jewish community endeavor at an overnight camp or a day camp, you're a little uneasy about the reception you're going to get. And we wanted to make sure that our movement let them know that we treasure them and the commitment that they've made, and that we're going to receive them with open arms and with a warm hug and a warm embrace. And this year we thought it was important, therefore, for me in my capacity as the professional point person for the movement to go and deliver that message personally. And it was rowdy. Those of you who don't know me, and that really is most of you, I think, don't know that I'm a camp guy. I'm a former camp director, and that my natural habitat is in a t-shirt and cutoffs and sandals or near a basketball court, and all of this sort of formal organizational work has come unnaturally for me over the years. Anyway, so I agreed to go to Israel, and then you did what you've done. Together with colleagues across the continent, this is one of 4 regional professional conferences that are going on this week. Between you, there'll be over 600 JCC professionals, which, by the way, is more than we would have had at ProCon. It's amazing. It's really amazing. And that's not all, because there was a regional professional conference in Texas in February, and because there's going to be a regional professional conference in Nashville in April, and because there's going to be probably 2 more regional professional conferences in the fall, at least one of them in the Northeast, there's a great likelihood that you'll be among 1,000 people that took part in person in professional conferences this year. And that's amazing, and not what we anticipated when we grudgingly deferred our commitment to hosting ProCon, because we love hosting ProCon, and we miss having a room filled with hundreds and hundreds of JCC professionals. But how remarkable is it that with virtually no notice, here it was Todd and Tucson and your planning committee, who, by the way, I think we should just offer them another thank you. You guys, your work is off the charts. Amazing. But that in half a dozen places and counting, regional conferences were pulled together, and they were pulled together with one particular intention in mind: to fill rooms like this with people who work in JCCs, who do amazing work at a challenging and remarkably opportune time, sometimes under very difficult circumstances, by the way, and are making it possible for us to do things in community building that would otherwise not be possible to do. And on little notice at all, you have gathered in your many, many hundreds of professionals. And so even though I had made the commitment to be in Israel, there was no way I wasn't going to take advantage of the chance to come and spend some time with you. And it won't be a lot of time, because at the crack of dawn tomorrow, I have to get in my rented pickup truck. I can't believe they gave me a pickup truck at Avis. I have to get in. I can't believe they gave me a pickup truck. It's very large. I have to drive back to Phoenix and get on a plane to D.C. so that tomorrow evening and the next day I can spend time at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Conference at Capital Camps, because how could I not take advantage of a chance to be with more of our colleagues? So that's what I wanted you to know. Also, that allowed me to get on a little bit of a roll, because I'm 10 time zones out of place, and there's a good chance I'm going to fall asleep up here in front of you, and now that I'm moving, I think it's going to be a little bit better. I want to say something else on the subject of Israel, because I'm assuming many of you have been glued to the news. As I have been. And now that you can get Wi-Fi on planes, 12 hours flying home yesterday and another 5.5 this morning was nothing but Israel news and refreshing the update every few minutes. So I want to tell you what's going on in Israel. We're reading and hearing a lot of things. People who are nervous about what the new government has been doing in the area of judicial reform. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know anything about judicial reform, but I know that some of the things that the government is trying to pass are making a lot of people uneasy. And there are members of this government that are conducting themselves in a way that are making a lot of people uneasy. And so what's happened in Israel over these last weeks is that the country has exercised its democratic right to gather and protest and demonstrate and make sure that its voice is heard. Every week on Saturday night across the country, hundreds of thousands of Israelis. And in recent days, as the problems have amped up, every day in their hundreds of thousands. So on Saturday night, my son Aaron, who's a student at Hebrew University who made Aliyah in 2018, and I went to the center of Tel Aviv to be present as 200,000 Israelis of every age, of every background, families, kids with strollers, with signs, everybody wrapped in the flag. Everybody wrapped in the flag. Demonstrated their democratic rights to be heard, that the government that they elected was conducting policies that they didn't anticipate and that they didn't want them to do. Vibrant demonstration of the will of the people at a time of democratic problem, challenge, and crisis. And because we're at a moment in history, in Israel and here, where we speak about everything in the most extreme terms, people are talking about the risk to the future of democracy and the changing of Israeli society, and have we seen the best of what it's going to be? And is this the third time a Jewish commonwealth would have lasted 75 years and come to an end? That's a little overly dramatic for the things that have happened and are happening. But when people get nervous about the things that they felt they could rely upon, they begin to feel like their hair is on fire and they need to say and do something about it. And Israelis have gone about that in a remarkably impressive, responsible, nonviolent way. Over the weekend, Yoav Gallant, the Minister of Defense, made a public statement in opposition to what the government was doing to say it's time to take a break from judicial reform and advancing this legislation. And a few hours later, Prime Minister Netanyahu fired him. And hundreds of thousands of Israelis came pouring out in the street last night and today. And when I say pouring out into the street, they filled the major highway in downtown Tel Aviv and closed it to traffic. And in the hours that followed, the National Labor Union, the Histadrut, announced a nationwide strike. And today, Ben Gurion Airport was closed. The universities were closed. Municipal government offices were closed. Israeli embassies around the world were on skeleton staff, closed. And leader after leader insisted that that was a bridge too far and that something needed to be done to stem the tide of this onrushing move to judicial reform and societal change. And as I was making my way out here on my flight, I saw the update that Prime Minister Netanyahu has made an announcement that he is suspending the continuation of the process of judicial reform to allow several months for negotiation and discussion about the evolutions that need to be made in the eyes of many. 75% of Israelis believe that some form of judicial reform is needed in Israel, where the power of the courts are the most significant in the Western world, in the current modus operandus, and there's a change that's required, but not a fast change and not a rush and not an overly aggressive one. And now there's going to be time. And I think that notwithstanding the fact that many people felt that their hair was on fire and that maybe it should be, it's entirely possible that we are witnessing one of the most significant demonstrations of vibrant democracy that the Western world has seen in a generation. And that should make us feel very proud. And for those of you that are going to welcome Israelis into your camps and programs this summer and in the coming year, welcome them with a warm embrace and a big smile. They are us and we are them, extended members of the same people, the same community. They're dealing with a lot of stress and strain at home there. Let's make sure that when they come here, we give them the opportunity to be their best selves. So all of that is by way of saying, that's why I don't know what time it is, why I'm not working off my planned and prepared outline here. But I thought that those are things that you should want to know. And I'm looking at Sarah Sless, my colleague from our Israel office, and others who are intimately engaged in these issues and will have very legitimate and perhaps divergent opinions on where this is and where it's going, all in a legitimate way. That's what democracy is all about. But I think that the pressure valve has been released a little bit, and we can all take a breath while we wait and see what's coming next. I need to pose some questions. We've now talked about the Great Resignation and the revolving door and the labor crisis. I know some of you. I have visited many of your JCCs. I don't know all of you. I need just a little show of hands poll on a few questions. How many of you are attending at least your 5th JCC Movement Professional Conference? That's not bad. How many of you are attending at least your 3rd JCC Movement Professional Conference? And the 5th people as well. I need those hands again. Okay, hands down. How many of you are attending your 1st JCC Movement Professional Conference? Wow, that's magnificent. Welcome. Welcome. I used to start all of my presentations, stop it, Joanne. She's eyeing me up and giving me the stink eye already. I used to start all of my presentations at these conferences and programs by saying I think I'm probably the least experienced JCC professional in the room. I see that that's no longer the case. Not saying it anymore. But let me get a little bit of a handle on tenure, because there's a difference between attending these conferences and whether or not you're a tenured professional. How many of you have been working in a JCC, any JCC, at least 10 years? Big crowd. Okay, hands down. Those of you who are between 5 and 10 years, more than 5. Okay. Those of you who are working at a JCC for fewer than 1 year, less than 1 year, fewer, less than 1 year. Significant number. Okay, so first of all, I'm delighted to be in the company of such a diverse set of JCC professionals. Second of all, it is an emblematic makeup of this group that we are emblematic of the people that are working and making the work of JCCs possible today. New and veteran, short-term and long. And for those of you who are attending your first conference with your peers, you're getting perhaps the first up-close introduction to what it means to be part of something larger than your local institution or your local program, We're a movement. A movement means that we have a sense of where we are together. We have a sense of where we aspire to be together. And we will work together to take us from where we are to where we aspire to be. And I'll say a few more words about that in a moment. But we are a movement. And there are a few things about our movement that I think you need to know. Again, for those who've heard me before, you'll forgive the repetition of things. They will tell you what Sally didn't in her brief but very meaningful and heartfelt introduction. That before I was a professional in the organized Jewish community, I was an IBM finance geek. I used to work on mainframe systems when there were such things as mainframe systems, so you can tell it was a long time ago. But the numbers have always spoken to me. And when I was first considering a job in this field, and by the way, I have never worked in a JCC. You must think, boy, JCC Association must have been pretty hard up. They took a guy that never spent a day in a JCC and gave him this job. I'll give you the email address of the chair of the board that hired me, and you can take that matter up with him. But when this opportunity was presented to me, after first saying I'm the wrong guy for this, I've never worked in a JCC, I was pushed hard by a friend to do some homework and then decide if I wanted to go to the interview. And when I did the homework, I learned about you, and I learned things that you either already know or you really need to know. Here's what I learned. We are a network of 170 JCCs across Canada and the United States. And actually, since many of them are multiple sites, we're about 400 sites. Facilities, camps, campuses, etc., across North America. Between us, we welcome 1.5 million people every week through our doors, in person. 1.5 million touches every week in person. That's colossal. 1 million of them are Jews. We welcome 1 million Jews a week through our doors. And you know them. You know them better than I do, but I know that if I sit in the lobby of your JCC on a typical day, I'll see them all. I'll see every face of the Jewish community, not every individual, but every style, every age, every background, very religious, not religious, left, right, the entire identity alphabet. I'll see them on any given day, and I'll know what your Jewish community looks like in a matter of hours. There are no other institutions on the landscape of Jewish life that can do anything close to that. None. 1 million Jews a week in person of every background and disposition. We are the largest platform for Jewish engagement in North America, bar none, and nobody's close. And 500,000 of our friends and neighbors from beyond the Jewish community also come through our doors every single week. Every single week in every community, 500,000 altogether. They come to us to do something that they could just as easily do somewhere else, except that they like how we do it better. They like what we do. They like how we make them feel. They like being part of our community. They like the embrace that they get. Whatever it is, there's something that you do that makes them prefer to be part of it in your community. There are no Jewish institutions in North America that come anywhere close to seeing that many of our friends and neighbors in the wider community. None. That makes us the largest platform for Jewish community relations in North America. Not even close. It makes the places you work the Jewish community's embassy to the wider geography that you serve. More people decide how they feel about the Jewish community because of you and what you do than any other Jewish institution or setting in North America. That's colossal. 1.5 million, 1 million Jews, 500,000 of our friends and neighbors, 100,000 kids in our summer camps. You run the largest network of Jewish day camps in North America. Not even close. You run about 75% of the landed Jewish day camps in North America. And the largest network of Jewish overnight camps in North America. 24 overnight camps. That's more or less the same number as the Reform movement and the Conservative movement combined. More or less. That's how many we run. Amazing summer camps in every corner of the continent. We're the biggest. The biggest. The biggest preschool operation in the Jewish community. We have 35,000 children in our preschools and 6,000 teachers. Again, far and away the biggest player on the land. And I look around this room, 180, was that the nose count in the end? 185. You are among 34,000 people that work in JCCs during the year. Not counting the summer staff, about 17,000 others. 34,000 full and part-time staff that work in JCCs throughout the year. That sounds like a big number to me. I'll give you a comparison to some of our peers in the organized Jewish community. The Jewish Federations of North America, all together, about 3,000 people, full and part-time throughout the year. Hillel, which is another peer network of ours, they have about 180 Hillels across campuses. On this continent, 1,200 staff. You are among 34,000 full and part-time staff, another 17,000 seasonal staff. There are more than 50,000 people. We are the professional backbone, the professional engine of organized Jewish life. Almost everybody who ever has a career in the organized Jewish community will spend at least a part of it doing what you guys are doing. It took me a long time to become part of that, but eventually you can't help but come into this field. And why? So the numbers are very impressive, but why does that matter so much? Why does it matter? I've been working in the Jewish community a long time, and I've always worked in national organizations. Always. Very interesting. I was the director of the Young Judea Youth Movement for a bunch of years. I was in the Federation system where I headed the Israel and Overseas unit at a time when Federation campaigns were sending $400 million abroad every year to help Jews in need in different parts of the world and to run programs in Israel. That was very exciting. I spent 10 years representing an Israeli university, Ben Gurion University of the Negev, dealing with Negev development and academic research, all kinds of interesting things. And all throughout that time, I was an active observer of what was going on in the Jewish community broadly. I wasn't all that excited about what I was seeing. And the reason I wasn't excited about it is because everywhere I looked, fewer people were taking part. Everywhere I turned, I grew up in a conservative congregation in the New York metropolitan area, and I was dismayed to discover that non-Orthodox congregations in North America have seen an 80% reduction in the number of people who come to shul. In the last generation, 80% reduction. I was part of the Jewish Federation system, and I was dismayed to learn that 70% of the people that used to give to federations don't give anymore. The federations have to raise more money from fewer donors every year, but as a campaign, as a means of bringing people together, making people feel like part of something bigger than themselves, that was gone. I grew up, there was a B'nai B'rith Lodge in my town. Do you guys have any B'nai B'rith Lodges in your town anymore? You can dust the cobwebs off the front of those places. Or Hadassah chapters, or the ZOA, the Zionist Organization of America, which was a thing at one time. In instance after instance, in place after place, the number of people participating in Jewish life has dropped like an anchor. And I'm watching. And then I recognized that something unique was happening here. I just rattled off all of those numbers for you. The only place in the Jewish community that not only isn't seeing fewer members of our community than they were a generation ago, but is seeing in many cases more is this one. And I know many JCCs see a lot of people from beyond the Jewish community, but there is nothing else happening in your community that sees more Jews than what you're doing. Nothing. So if it's possible for us to do better as a Jewish community, to feel more accountable, more responsible for one another, more connected, stronger links with Israel and with Jews and communities around the world, we can no longer look around and hope somebody else will take care of it. There may have been a time where it was okay to look at our partners. Congregations will do their part, and federations will do their part, and the B'nai B'rith will do their part, and the youth movements will do their part. Everybody will do their part. We'll worry about our part. We do our part really well. We do, by the way. But it's not enough. Because what's happening in Jewish life is fewer and fewer people are taking part. It's not enough for us to stand still or run in place or to do incrementally a little bit better, a little bit worse, which we do a lot of the time. If there's going to be a better day in the offing for the Jewish community in North America, we will author it. It'll be on our shoulders to get it done. Nobody else has the critical mass or the level of engagement or the diversity of programs or the remarkable ability to make people feel warm, welcome, and embraced as a community than we do. And therefore, it's on us to raise our game. That's why I wanted to be part of this gig. To come here and say, I work with 34,000 people who understand that it's their gig to take us from where we are to a place that we aspire to be. That's why I came. Whether you did on purpose or not, you're here. You get the opportunity to be part of that. And that's the work that lies ahead. And then it got more complicated. I arrived in 2017, in the middle of a bomb threat crisis at the time. We've had a funky few years since I got here. You've lived through, most of you, not the newbies. New guys, welcome. Welcome to the easy life. The veterans in the room have lived through what we hope, once-in-a-century pandemic. We think it's once in a century because there's nobody alive from the last one. Almost. It turned our world upside down. And not just that. It became an amplifier for problems that we were having in our society anyway. A society that had become increasingly divided, increasingly accusatory, increasingly rattled. It's possible that being a community builder is countercultural today. And it never was before, not in my lifetime. In my lifetime, building community was rolling with the current. That's where society goes, bringing people together, doing better, raising people up. Not recently. Recently, it's about who's not like me and what is my complaint about them. That's what's happening in society. I've had conversations with a lot of very smart people on this issue, and I always try to, I come up with a good word out of my political science course that I took as an undergraduate, and I talk about polarization. And people smarter than me said that's not the right word for this time. What we have now is atomization. We're divided into 1,000 parts, not 2. And each one of us has a complaint about the other 999 parts. We have a grievance. And here you are in your JCCs, a JCC movement whose job it is to say that when you come through our doors, you're part of the family. There's no survey you fill out where you have to lodge your political opinion, your religious disposition, your personal orientation, your personal identity. We have no such requirements when you walk in the door. You come through our doors, and the things that we share in common are much more important than the things that set us apart. And only when we build a community where the things that we share in common matter more can we have an intelligent argument about the things over which we don't agree. That's what happens in constructive community building. You are countercultural today because you are working on enabling people to feel part of something larger than themselves without preconditions. At a time when everybody is deciding what they want to be into by their social media group, this friends group, whatever news source they listen to, that's not who we are. Thank God. Thank God that's not who we are. Because for the time being, there aren't enough others who are thinking in those terms. So creating thoughtful, empathetic, ideological, committed communities is a very distinctive gig. And if we're successful at it, we will contribute to the turning of the tide, not just in our own community, vitally important, but in the wider society. We are the role model of what it should be like to be part of a Canadian community or an American community, certainly to be part of a Jewish community. And that's the gig. And that's the challenge that we have at the moment. It's not easy work. You know it's not easy work. There aren't enough staff. There's too much turnover. There isn't enough money. The pipes are leaking. We got all kinds of problems. These are first world problems. First world problems. And for those of you that are students of Jewish history, I don't know how many of you there are. I'm an amateur at that, but I can tell you this. For 100 generations, our people suffered from being at the mercy of somebody other than ourselves, who bore responsibility for the conditions in which we were allowed to live, when we were allowed to live, and we weren't always. 100 generations, almost 2,000 years since the end of the Second Commonwealth and the founding of the State of Israel in 1948. But I'm going to venture to say everybody in this room, we came into the world and certainly into leadership at a time that the Jewish people have never had it so good. In 2,000 years. Because beginning in 1948, we had sovereignty. That story I was telling you at the beginning of this session about what's happening in Israel at a time of vibrant and complicated democracy is emblematic of the fact that we've got first world problems as a people. Thank God. 100 generations of those who came before us would have given their left arm to have first world problems. They would have given their left arm to have a moment in the world in which we live, where thanks to the fact that we have a vibrant, powerful, secure, sovereign state of Israel, far from perfect, we get to be whoever we want to be wherever we choose to live. Anywhere in the Jewish world, we get to be who we want to be because we got a backstop. Sovereignty has created self-determination for us. And we, Americans and Canadians, live and work in the most prosperous and successful diaspora community in the history of the world. Each of you think back to when your family arrived on these shores. And I have to imagine that those people that stepped foot through whatever their Ellis Island entry was, whenever they came, in their wildest fantasies couldn't have imagined the reality that we live today. In their wildest fantasies, couldn't have imagined that Jews on this continent have reached the pinnacle of achievement in every form of human endeavor. In science, in the arts, in politics, in business. You name it. There's nothing that we haven't set our mind to achieving that we haven't been able to achieve. And all along the way, we built the largest infrastructure apparatus of Jewish communal life that I think probably the world has ever seen outside of Israel. We've got so much infrastructure, we don't know what to do with it. And that comes back to the issue that I was talking about earlier. We're not participating enough as a community, so we're overbuilt and underutilized. And what happens when you're overbuilt and underutilized? Everybody starts worrying about their corner. I better look out for mine because there aren't enough people to go around, so I'll just take care of my corner here. Everybody's my competitor. And you hear the mythology of mine, my donor, my members, my families, my staff. The fallacy of this mythological notion is that no donor or member or family or staff is beholden to whoever said that they belong to them. They'll only stay with them as long as it feels good to stay. After that, off they go to something that they find more interesting or better. It's a myth, except in one category. There's one time where mine is legit, my community. But in my community, it's not a question of my part of the community. It becomes a question of what I have to contribute in my community. And what do my peers and partners and allies and other Jewish organizations and Jewish communal institutions have to contribute? Because if that's the question, if we understand that our mission and purpose is greater Jewish community, then the question is, what do I have to contribute to the pursuit of something greater than myself? Something over which I don't have control, but I'm willing to lend my shoulder to the wheel. Those are the questions. And by the way, those are the questions that you guys answered in spades throughout the course of the pandemic. Because when COVID-19 struck and most people crumbled and fell to their knees and folded up and closed the doors, JCC's figured out a way to stay open. JCC's figured out a way to provide for essential services and needs. JCC's assured that preschoolers were going to have a safe place to go and more kids were going to be welcome. JCC's repositioned their after-school programs to all day at the J so that school-age kids would have a place to go that was out of the house and safe so their parents could go to work. JCC's pivoted from providing a modest number of meal programs to seniors who used to come to the building to providing geometrically larger numbers of meals delivered to seniors and other shut-in members of the community in partnership with Jewish and human service initiatives across the community. JCC's found a way to make their increasingly safely operated facilities open to those whose buildings were closed. Synagogue closed, high holiday services at the JCC. Day school closed, teacher training conferences at the JCC. Federation closed, board meeting at the JCC. We became the place, indoors, outdoors. We figured it out, at huge cost, by the way. And at a time where our business model was fundamentally at issue, we figured it out. We figured it out We were the most desirable partner and ally in every Jewish community in which we operated. Everybody else. And they saw it. They noticed. The leaders noticed that there was stuff happening at JCCs that was good for them too, and they wanted more. And you know who else noticed? Funders noticed. Your donors noticed. You may or may not be aware that tens of thousands of people who never contributed charitably to JCCs before did so during COVID. Tens of thousands, including the biggest and most famous donors and funders in the land. And the question that we have to contend with now, the opportunity, how do we bottle those impulses? The worst of COVID may be behind us, God willing. Every time somebody declares it's over, then the next day they get a call that their sister has COVID. Yesterday, I got a call that my brother has COVID. Seriously. It's true. It's not over. It may never be over, but there's very little chance that anything that COVID can bring now will surprise or frighten us. It won't. Been there. We've been there. We've done that. We've moved on. So taking the lessons that we learned in COVID, how do we bottle an impulse to partnership and collaboration? How do we capitalize on the fact that tens of thousands of people that never contributed to us before happily contributed to us, and sometimes many times over? How do we capitalize on the fact that we have been seen and recognized by the wider Jewish community, the organized Jewish community, as perhaps the most important enterprise it has? We capitalize on it by considering that in this moment, where we've never had it so good, in a world of Jewish sovereignty, where we're overbuilt and underutilized, that the limits of our success will be defined only by the extent of our ambitions and our readiness to roll up our sleeves and get the job done. There are no legitimate reasons for us not to be monumentally successful over which we don't have control. And that's very unusual in the professional world anywhere. Private sector, public sector, civic sector. There are very few places where the limits of our success are the constraints only that we impose on ourselves as a result of our ambitions, our willingness to work hard, but that's where we are. With the chance to embrace this moment. So, I have no idea what time it is and how much time I have left. I'm just saying. 15 minutes. That's not what time it is. 4 o'clock. Not in my head. 4 o'clock in Arizona. So let me use these 15 minutes in the following way. I want to say a few more things about you, and then I want to talk a little bit about JCC Association. Those of you who've never been to a conference before probably don't know us very well. Hopefully you've seen us around. You've seen our logo. You get our emails. You've participated in a cohort meeting or something from time to time. But why would you know us that well? There aren't that many of us. We're not out in the field nearly as much as we'd like to be. I want to tell you a little bit about what we are, what we do, and how we'd like to know you. JCC Association, lousy name, by the way. I'm just saying. It's not a good name. We should fix it. We'll fix it. JCC Association is the umbrella. If you look at the JCC movement as a mountain range, where each JCC community is on a different peak based on size and location, we get to sit at the highest peak. And the advantage of sitting at the highest peak is we see the whole range. We can see all of you. In the old days, and I've been doing Jewish communal work long enough to be able to have said that I have had old days. In the old days, the model of national or continental organizations and their sectors was something called the hub and spokes model. You familiar with the hub and spokes model? We sit in the middle. We have a relationship with each of you. Separate relationship, but all roads lead through the hub. The hub has wisdom. The hub has knowledge. The hub imparts. It deigns to impart to all of the small ends of the spokes the knowledge that we have that works everywhere. That model's outdated. Doesn't work. It's not the way it is. You know why? Because your communities have so diversified, so changed and moderated themselves to become a local depiction of whatever your circumstances are, that there is no one answer for everybody. The hub and spokes model is an anachronism. It's out of date. The model that we aspire to today is what I would call a matrix model. There are 171 points in this matrix, 170 JCCs and one JCC association. And our job is to strengthen the ties between the points. Between us and each of the points, lovely. Between each of the points and each of the points, that's what's important. That's one of the reasons why these gatherings are so important. The more connected you are with one another in all of your diversity, the more likely you are to learn and grow and be engaged and draw wisdom and experience and have a shoulder to cry on that's not some disembodied national enterprise. We're not a JCC. Shame. We don't even work out of one. That's also a shame. I think we should at some point move into a JCC so we would live the world that you're living. But our job is to connect the dots. That's our job. Our job is to enable every JCC in this movement to be the best possible version of itself. Our job is to look at this movement like a jigsaw puzzle, where no two pieces are the same, and know how to fit every single piece together. We're the ones that can know how to put the pieces together in a unique way, and then devote ourselves to doing that. So a few years ago, we started to reorganize, to reinvent ourselves with that as a notion. We are not interested only in JCC communities in big cities. We are not interested only in JCC communities that are on the Northeast. We are not only interested in JCC communities that are south of the St. Lawrence River. We're interested in every JCC community in North America, and we are deeply and passionately committed to three major goals in every JCC community. It should be a greater Jewish community, more vibrant Jewish life, measurable and intentional Jewish outcomes should be achieved according to the roadmap decided by the local Jewish community. And we will engage in those endeavors that will matter to every JCC, no matter its size or its location. We're focusing our work on 5 core areas. Several of them are at work here in this room right now. Number 1 is talent. 30-odd thousand full and part-time staff throughout the year and 17,000 in the summer. Our job is to fill and energize that talent pipeline from the first day of a person's career to their last, wherever they happen to do their job, to give them the tools to be better and to grow and to develop on-ramps and supportive off-ramps where necessary to enable this community to thrive. Gatherings like this and other programs I'll talk about. You may or may not be aware that we run a whole host of talent development programs that are available to you in your JCCs, which we're not doing a good enough job of sticking in your face so that you know that they're there. That we have a full-year fellowship for people who work with teams in any capacity. That we have a full-year fellowship for people who are early tenured in their JCC careers, between 3 and 5 years, in any role, at any age that you've come into the field. That we have onboarding programs for people in various programs and activities. That we have a scholarship program for those of you that want to pursue an advanced degree while you work. We have them, and we're not doing a good enough job of telling you about them, but we're working on supercharging this pipeline. In the last few years, we've brought millions of dollars of philanthropic funding into enabling us to build and expand these programs. You're going to hear a lot more about them. Talent is number 1. Number 2 is data. We've been doing this work for a long time. Anybody know when the first JCC opened its doors? 1854. The longest continuing operating JCC in the country is in Baltimore, of all places. We've been in this business a long time, and we've learned and experienced a lot of things. And for the most part, when it comes to data and information management, we kind of suck, to use a technical term. But we are endeavoring to do a great deal better. Create a reservoir of everything we know, that everything we have learned over as many years as we can, and pilot it to a single place that any of you, anywhere, can access anytime for any purpose. We relaunched the JCC Resource Center a year and change ago, and we continue to pilot with everything we learn and know about the field and everything the field tells us about itself, so that you can easily query anything about anyone, anywhere, and it'll point you directly at the person with a link to their phone number, their email, to pose your question and gather the data. Our job is to continue to build ourselves as a data warehouse and powerhouse that will enable you to be as smart as all of us from your first day. That's the second thing. Here's number 3. We already talked about the fact that these 170 JCCs are unique. No two are alike. No two are alike. And therefore, each one is a laboratory for learning. They're laboratories for innovation in operations, in design, in programs, in implementation, in outcomes. Laboratories. Our job is to compile, to curate knowledge and wisdom about the unique things that are happening in the field, find the things that are working best, and go out and find philanthropists to invest venture philanthropy in our ability to bring them from one JCC to the next. That's what we're working on. That's what we did before COVID when we gathered a bunch of funders and showcased some of our greatest initiatives like the JCC on Wheels at the Aaron Family JCC in Dallas, a mobile program space for taking JCC programs to communities that were too far away for the J from the people to come to the building. So the building came to them. Funder liked it. Within 6 months, 9 more mobile program spaces were added in JCCs in different parts of the country. That's the idea. Our Palo Alto friends are here. They've launched a magnificent conversation enterprise around Israel-diaspora relations called Z3, Zionism 3.0. I won't spend a lot of time on it, but I will tell you that they routinely gather 1,000 people every year for a day of deliberation and learning. And 3/4 of the people who come are not members of the JCC. They come from the wider community, and we're busy working with them to bring money from outside to enable those programs to be replicated in other parts of the field. And I go on and on about those things. That's number 3, innovation. So talent, data, innovation, signature programs. We run a few things under our own flag that are intended to drive people through your doors. Most of you have heard of the JC Maccabi Games. If you haven't, tune in. You should hear about the JC Maccabi Games. This is the Jewish community's Teen Olympics. We run them every year. Thousands of kids in multiple JCC communities competing together in athletics. In some years, we add arts as a competition. We started last year adding a special needs program, JC Maccabi Access. By the way, our friends in San Diego did a magnificent job in bringing the games back last summer. And rumor has it, another JCC in the room has recently signed on to host the JCC Maccabi Games. Our friends here in Tucson. What year? 2025. We're lining them up far out in the future. Those games are intended to drive people through your doors, to give you the means of recruiting kids and families. And if you host the games, to give you the means of gathering every Jewish enterprise and institution in your community to put on this experience for kids. By the way, 70% of the kids who compete in the games for the first time have previously had no involvement in Jewish life. And almost all of them begin a significant involvement in Jewish life thereafter. JC Maccabi Games. I'll tell you something else that we've been doing that probably most people in this room don't know anything about. In 1917, when we finally succeeded in becoming a national organization, by the way, 4th try at becoming a national organization by 1917. And here I have to pause and tell you a story. I have a few minutes. Short story. Many of you know, a few of us still go by this name. We didn't begin as JCCs. We began as YMHAs, Young Men's Hebrew Associations. We began finding ways for young Jewish men to come together for cultural pursuits to help them get settled in communities as immigrants. It was all about young men and later young women who were added when we became YMYWHA. In 1917, what happened? Why did we finally get it together? World War I started. And young men needed to go off to war. And the Jewish community wanted to belly up to the bar and said, our guys should also go. We'll help you to recruit young men to go off to war because that's our business. We're in the young men business. We joined together with several others and we became an engine for the recruitment and support of young men going off to war. That they would have what Jews in combat and on assignment would need. For Jewish holidays, the kosher food, the implements that they needed. They should have a Tanakh, a Bible in their pocket, and a Siddur, a prayer book in their pocket. We would provide them. That's how we began as a national organization at wartime, because we were the right place for identifying and connecting with young men. And 106 years later, we're still in that business. Today, you may not know, there are 10,000 Jews serving on active military duty in the branches of the United States Armed Forces. We don't have this relationship in Canada. I know Vancouver is here. Anybody else from Canada beyond Vancouver in the room? Calgary is here. My apologies. We've not figured out how to deal with this with Canada yet. Still working on it. 10,000 Jews in active military service, living on military installations with 15,000 members of their family. And we still provide. We recruit and train chaplains. We sponsor and assure that there's a Sefer Torah, a Torah scroll in key bases and ships at sea. We still provide the Siddur and the prayer book and the Bible and everything that they need. We advocate for kosher food in the Defense Department in Washington at the Pentagon. Those folks are still our business. Not just because they're putting their lives on the line in defense of our country, but because they're at the beginning of a lifetime of involvement in Jewish life. And we want them to come through your doors when their service is over. And we want you to reach out to them if they're serving in your neighborhood while they're in military service. It's still our business. JWB, we became the Jewish Welfare Board in 1917, fourth try to start a national organization. Fourth time was the charm. And there are other programs that we do, but when we operate a program, it's intended to drive those people through your doors. Talent, data, innovation, signature programs. I already talked about the matrix. The fifth building block here is what we call experience. Your experience. What experience do you have from being part of something larger than yourselves? Part of something larger than your institution? That's our business, the connective tissue, making you feel like you're part of something bigger by convening, by providing. We've launched cohort peer communities. Joy Brand Richardson is here. We've got a dozen peer communities by professional role that we're beginning to convene on a regular basis so that you'll have a chance to talk and engage with one another. What materials we can provide, what resources you need. How do we become stronger? And then how do we figure out how to help you solve the biggest problems that you face? I didn't know anything about JCCs when I took this job. I didn't know anything about early childhood education when I took this job. I have children. I have 3 children. I know they went to early childhood education programs. I seem to remember dropping them off sometimes. And I don't always remember it being such a pleasant experience, I have to tell you. But I didn't know anything about what it was really about. I thought it was childcare so that Janet and I could work. Drop them off, little child care, should be safe, should be clean, pick them up at the end of the day. Thanks for taking care of my kid. I didn't discover until later what I've learned in the years since I've been here, learning from you, by the way, that Jewish early childhood education is a family engagement paradigm. I didn't understand that it was the most significant gateway program we have for engaging families at a critical turning point moment in their lives, where they will either choose to be part of a Jewish community or not, based on price, convenience, whatever else. I didn't realize at that time that if we get them, particularly in a JCC, we have 20 different ways to engage and involve that family. I didn't realize at the time that most of the social group of the parents would be other parents who were also at the preschool. I didn't understand that at the time. And I certainly didn't understand that for every family that chooses not to go to a Jewish early childhood education program, that they were going into the equivalent of Jewish witness protection. We will never see them again unless they choose to be identified. And therefore, it's a turning point moment. And then I discovered that we have 35,000 kids in our programs and 15,000 kids on our waiting list. 15,000 families banging on the glass. I want in. I'm sorry, we have no space for you. Or worse, the real problem, I'm sorry, we don't have enough teachers, so we can't open another classroom. You'll have to figure something else out. They're banging on the glass, and they're ready to pay, and they're eager to participate, and we know that it's a turning point moment in their lives, and that if we don't open the doors, they're going into witness protection, and we haven't been able to solve that problem. And the teacher shortage is a crisis, and it's not just ours. The reform movement, number 2 in size in the field, same problem. Conservative movement, same problem. Everybody's got the same problem. There aren't enough teachers. And those of you who work in that field, by the way, God bless you. Forgive me, executives. I'm going to get into trouble. I already met with the CEOs, so I don't have to face them again after I say what I'm about to say. Sorry. We don't pay you enough. We don't provide enough of a career track for you. We don't provide sufficient professional development for you. We don't take seriously our responsibility to be invested in Jewish early childhood education simply because people are paying for us to take care of their kids, but because it is the most purposeful, mission-oriented thing that we can do. We cannot leave those people banging on the glass and sleep at night. We can't. And so, among other things, we are endeavoring to work in significant partnership, learning from you about what it means to work together. We've made an alignment with the Reform Movement, the Union for Reform Judaism, with the Jewish Federations of North America, the Jim Joseph Foundation, the Crown Family Philanthropies, and the Samuels Foundations out of Houston. And we're investing over the next 3 years $12.5 million in experimenting on ways to recruit and retain teachers in early childhood education in 14 pioneer communities. We're going to try a bunch of stuff, not randomly, but stuff that we've worked hard to arrive at, in expectation that the things that work the best are going to receive dramatic investment from these and other funders. In my view, after this round, the next round will be $50 million of investment as we expand the circle to several dozen other JCCs. And at the end of the day, it's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars of philanthropy, enabling us to blow open the doors on teacher recruitment and retention. And then we're going to take those 15,000 kids off our waiting list and welcome them into our buildings. Because it's the most powerful family engagement paradigm that we have. And it's also nice for the kids. But if we don't view it from that lens, then it's only about giving a service to somebody who's paying the freight for a service, and that's too small a lens for us to be looking through. And I want to finish by talking about those lenses. I think when the work is hard, and there's plenty of it, and there aren't enough people to do it, and it's frustrating, and we're dealing with all kinds of complexity, we focus on the narrowest lens through which we can look at the thing that's right in front of us, and we just worry about getting through the day. And there are days that we all do that. But if you step back a little bit and you look at the broader lens, you see that, as we've been talking about, early childhood is not about happy and safe kids, but it's about the engagement of families. You see that Jewish day camping is also a family engagement paradigm. You see that the people who work in our day camps and our overnight camps are just as important to target audience as the people who pay to be there. Because that demographic is the one that people say we can't touch those people anymore. And yet those teenagers in early 20s come to us in their tens of thousands in the summer to be part of doing Jewish community building and Jewish education with our kids. And if we're not staffing those staff with an eye towards who we expect them to be, our lenses are too narrow. And if we look at success in our community only as far as success in our buildings go, then once again we're not taking a wide enough look. Because if it's true that we're living at the high point of Jewish history since the destruction of the Second Temple, and I believe that we are, and if it's true that we believe that our success should be limited only by some combination of our ambitions and our willingness to work hard, then it also requires us to look at all the means that are at our disposal and to say we, the JCC, are going to model being an open platform for partnership and collaboration. We're going to see ourselves as the Jewish community's town square. And town squares are distinctive as a result of the fact that through the square you can get anywhere in the community. To open the doors to all of the things that the organized Jewish community has to offer, being part of our mandate, is looking through the wider lens. And for each of us then to say that we are prepared to be measured by whether or not the community we leave behind at the time that we finish our tenures in this work is measurably stronger and better and more vibrant than it was when we got there. That's the measuring stick of our success, through the wider lens. And that's who we are as a Jewish community. And I realize we're talking about Jewish community a lot, and I know that everybody in this room isn't Jewish, and I'm delighted that everybody in this room isn't Jewish, because we bring richness and diversity and varied experiences to work. But the Jewish community created these institutions in no small part to ensure that all of us working together would make them greater, so that Jewish communities can continue to contribute to better and better things over time. And we have nothing but wide lenses. And here I'll finish. In a few days, we're going to celebrate Passover. Pesach, this is the most widely celebrated Jewish event on the calendar in the entire world. And in it, we tell our story of how we went from slavery to liberation and freedom in our escape from Pharaoh in Egypt, wandering through the desert to the land promised to us by God, where we became once again a free and independent people. And when we look at the work that we do today through the lenses of those 4,000 years, trials and tribulations, ups and downs, triumph and tragedy, we've had it all, then we understand that we occupy a single link in the chain of Jewish history. And it goes back 4,000 years. And if you know anything about chain links, you know that every link onward from the one that you're at is entirely dependent on how strong your link is. And that's all we get. We get one link. We are the inheritors of 4,000 years of links that have been left in our hands. And the next, God willing, 4,000 and beyond will be dependent on how good we are with our link. And we've got our link at the high point of Jewish history in 2,000 years. And if we do our jobs well, it will no longer have been the high point because we've got it. So let's take us from where we are to the next high point and ensure that the links that follow ours will have every opportunity to create an ever greater reality for the one that comes after them. With my deepest thanks for your enormous dedication and hard work, and my delight at having the chance to spend some time with you, I wish you a Chag Sameach, a happy and healthy Pesach. May we go from strength to strength. Thank you.